Happy March 10th, 2023. We are here for the Webside chat with Jennie Stapp. I need to announce that Jennie has been called over to the legislature to testify and to support budget hearings. So she did leave her notices and information for us, but the highlight of our presentation today is going to be our guest speaker, Jim Kammerer. So I'll share a few things with you up front, and then I'll turn things over to Jim here in just a few moments. So again, welcome. This is the Webside chat for March. As all of you are already pros in your own way, please do let us know who you are. If you can update your name and include your library, that just helps us know who's here and where you're from. And then please do, if you have a question or a comment, please add those to the chat. I'll be monitoring that as we go along, and we'll bring your comments and questions to Jim in particular when he is speaking. So please do rename yourself so we know who you are, introduce yourself in the chat, or add your questions and comments there. As I said, we'll have a couple of legislative updates, unfortunately not directly from Jennie this time, but we will share what she left for us, and then we're going to look at the historic laws of Montana, and Jim's going to tell you all about that and give a demonstration, and then we have a little bit of a preview for the upcoming Montana Library Association conference. So what Jennie left information for us, and I see Rachel is on. So if Rachel has any more specific updates that you'd like to give, I'll certainly turn the microphone over to you in just a few moments. But the big things that are following now that the transmittal break is over, House Bill 91, which would revise laws related to public library state aid, that was successfully transmitted to the Senate. So I believe we're still waiting for hearing dates, times to be confirmed for that. And kind of same thing with Senate Bill 60 to establish the enterprise fund for the Montana Spatial Real-Time Network, and House Bill 343, which is to revise the geospatial and natural resource information laws. So those are a couple of the big bills to be following, and in a little bit here I'll put a link to where you can follow those laws and their activity as they move through the legislature. But I did want to just check in with Rachel too to see if you had any information that you wanted to share specific to any of these bills or others that the Library Association are following.
Sure. I think we just heard this morning that HB 91 is going to have a hearing for the Senate Education Committee next Wednesday. So we're reaching out to people to testify for that. And before transmittal, we had quite a few bills that were putting restrictions on mill levies, and we were pretty happy that all of those ended up dying before transmittal. So other than that, I think things are just kind of going well. It sounds like we'll have funding for the hotspot program, so that's pretty exciting. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I just kind of jumped on. So.
Yeah, no pressure, no pressure. And like I said, Jennie got called away, so we're all punting a little bit today. Rachel, I just wanted to remind folks, how can they find out about information kind of from MLA about what's happening with library related bills? What's the best place to stay in touch with those happenings?
Right now, it's still wired. We reach out to people individually when we really need to ask for testimony or for people to contact specific legislators in their area. But right now, the big updates are going out on Wired, and Jennie is sending out that really great weekly email about what's going on with the legislative session. And she's also keeping people updated on what's going on with MLA during the legislative session. So we really appreciate that.
That's excellent. Yeah, look, I'm sure she'll have an update. She is doing that every week on Friday, sending out that update. So if you haven't seen those and you haven't subscribed to Wired, that's a really good reason to do that. And then also Jenny's sharing kind of that same message through some of our newsletters from the State Library as well. Okay, so along those lines, as we just mentioned, you can monitor bills on the Montana Legislature website, connect through Rachel, through Alyssa, and others with the MLA Government Affairs Committee, and then certainly reach out to your local government officials who might be impacted or have something that they can do to lend either support or just understanding around some of the issues that this legislation touches on. Okay, so I am so excited to introduce to you Jim Kammerer. Those of you who may not know Jim or haven't met him in person, although I can't even imagine that that would be the case. Jim is the Government Information Librarian. That's kind of your title, right, Jim?
It is, yeah.
And so this is something I was so excited to learn about. You may have seen mentioned in press release and some newsletter items and that, but Jim's going to talk about the historic Montana laws and how you can access those. And I'm just, like I said, I'm excited about this. I'm a history geek, but also I really appreciate being able to find out what is the history of particular pieces of legislation and to be able to trace that over time. And what these collections have done for me is to make it so much easier to trace that history because this information goes back to the 1860s. Is that right, Jim?
Yeah, back to territorial days of Montana. Yeah.
Cool. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay.
If you don't mind, and then you can walk us through how to access these fantastic resources.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. I chose Conrad Public Library to demonstrate the location of these historic and current laws that we've digitized. Just backing up a bit, thanks for the nice introduction, Coley. Really appreciate that. Just in brief, what I do, my position at the library is that I work with state agencies and libraries in Montana to provide permanent public access to state government information that's intended for public distribution. And last year, the State Library, we partnered with the State Law Library of Montana and the legislative branch to digitize and make available online all the historic and current laws of Montana dating back to the late 1800s. Just personally, I can't imagine a more important body of government information, than the very laws which govern every aspect of our lives, every day, everywhere, at all times. And not only that they should be freely available to all of us. Just the idea that Montana residents, Montana citizens should have to pay again hundreds of dollars for print copies of these laws just frankly doesn't make any sense. We've already paid for it once as taxpayers. The legislature is in session again this year, creating more laws for us. So anyway, there's a number of state depository libraries across Montana, just a small handful, and those, they have a contractual relationship with the state library to get some print materials, mostly just the Montana Code annotated these days. But what I want to show you today is how your library and your patrons right now can have the same access to those digital copies of Montana Code. Also, we did the revised code of Montana, which is a little bit earlier version. And so I chose to use the Conrad Public Library. They're one of the, they're within the Montana Shared Catalog, but even if you weren't part of the Montana Shared Catalog, you'd still have access to that. So looking at their website, assuming you're a Montana Shared Catalog, in the left navigation here on your library website, you'll see digitized state publications. And if you just click on that, it loads the search interface for our collection. One thing I want to say right off the bat, you can see how it's kind of narrow and confined here. What I encourage you to do is to hover over the state publications collection there and open it up in a new tab or a new window. And when you do that, it's just much easier to see. You can see it's just a wider view. And so you'll see the three sub collections that we have for the Montana Code Annotated, the annotations to the Montana Code Annotated, and then the revised codes of Montana. So clicking on the Montana Code Annotated, you'll see that there are 295 copies that have been digitized. I urge, recommend, suggest that you go over here to date published and click on that. And when you do that, it will sort it by year much more nicely so that you see the most current issue is 2021. And scrolling down, it just goes into the earlier versions. One thing about the Montana Code Annotated, it's published in odd number years. So we're in 2023, and later this year in September or October, the laws that were passed will appear in the Montana Code Annotated 2023. And as soon as we have that, we'll upload it to this collection. One thing I especially like about this interface and this, now that we have this stuff digitized, is there's kind of new search opportunities that were not formerly or earlier available to people. And if you go to the search box right here, and searching on metadata, we'll just search on the title, publisher, date, author. But I recommend that you click on the radio button beside text contents. And that will allow you to search across all these copies, all 295. So it's kind of a random search, supposing you were interested in dogs. Click on that. And what you'll see right away is there are 123 results. So every instance of the word dog that appears in the Montana Code Annotated comes up, and you'll see a little snippet here: dogs running at large, seizure and pounding of dogs, hunting dogs, et cetera, et cetera. And then clicking on that particular copy, see if it works this time. I think there's some kind of issue going on at the Internet Archive, which is hosting our collection. I'm going to check with them immediately afterwards. But what you should see here is every instance of the word dog in that volume of the Montana Code Annotated. So anyway, that should be working later today, hopefully. I just need to contact our provider for this. And stepping back. So here we're at the State Library collection again. With the annotations, again, I recommend that you hover on published, click it, so it'll sort the dates again. One thing I would notice let you know about this is it's published on even years. So the next series is going to be issued in 2024. And if you want a little bit of more information about what the annotations are, you can click up here and read the description of what the annotations are. What else can I tell you? Let me click. Well, let me do a search within the annotations and see if it's somehow different here. This is one of the risks of live search. Okay, so stuff about rabid dogs, harassment by dogs. Let's click on that. Okay, again, there seems to be some issue at the Internet Archive. It should be resolved soon. Apologies for that.
I wondered, Jim, I was wondering if, because, you know, you can view these on the screen, and I'm not quite sure, you know, if people would do this very often, but there are other ways to access the contents. So if you click into one of the items, you have the
Sure.
option to look at it or download it as a PDF.
Thank you, Corey.
Yeah, under the download options, and this is true for any of the items in these collections. So like an EPUB, if you want to, you know, download it and have it on your e-reader, whatever that might be, or just a straight up PDF. There are ways to access that. The other thing that I love about the Internet Archive itself, just, you know, if you're doing research and even like if you're doing genealogical research and you want to, and there are things in these collections that might relate to, you know, family member that you're looking up. If you create a free account on the Internet Archive, that little favorite button that you see over on the right-hand side allows you to kind of save in a list of things that you want to go back to. You know, I've been using the Internet Archive for quite a long time to do both work research and personal research. And so I have a whole collection of favorite items that I can go back to at any time. And then the typical sharing option too, where you could email the item or, you know, share it on social media, that sort of thing too.
Yeah, thank you, Colette. That's excellent addition there. Yep. So let me just go out to the larger Internet Archive. Maybe things are working there. Yeah, so our collection is just a thin slice, a thin sliver of the much larger collection that's at the Internet Archive. You can see there's almost 7 million books that have been digitized. And our Montana State Library collection is part of this 6,900,000 items that have been digitized. And you can find just everything there. I can't encourage you enough to get acquainted with it for you and your patrons. So, yeah, that's all I have, Colette, at this point.
No worries. And just to confirm, I'm logged into my account with the Internet Archive, and I'm experiencing the same
issue. Okay. Yeah.
But I just wanted to let folks know I shared a link in the chat to just kind of a short explainer video that we put together that's a short demonstration of how to search within these collections. And if you watch that little video, you'll see what it looks like once we get beyond where we were stopped just now. And yeah, so I can't recommend enough kind of knowing about these collections and how to search them, because, you know, let's say in an upcoming legislative session, there's more legislation that touches on libraries and that sort of thing. You know, these are tools that allow you to create your own kind of view and record an understanding of how library laws have changed over time. So the sample search that you're going to see in that little short video is, I use library and libraries as the keyword term to search through. So yeah, can't recommend this enough as a great source. And I think many public library patrons would be interested in learning how to access these historical documents and historical laws. See, I'm checking in the chat here to see if we have some questions. And certainly if you have a question and would rather just unmute yourself, please go ahead and do that. We'd be happy to take your questions live.
And of course, feel free to contact me afterwards if you think of something later on, a question about how to find these digitized laws, the current and historic.
Oh, that's yes, absolutely. And so I'll just kind of quickly share a few things to follow up. You'll see once we're done, we're not going to get to our balance break. I did want to just share really quickly a little bit of information about what to expect in Billings at the Montana Library Association conference. You can see, of course, everything about the program and registration on the MLA website. You can also access information about sessions for getting ready for claiming credits after the conference is over in Aspen. But in particular, we just want to let you know that on April 12th, the State Library Commission will have its regular business meeting. And there's lots of different things on the agenda there. And then there will also be, as we do annually, a conversations with the commission session. That's Thursday morning, the 13th. And there will be an opportunity to ask the commission questions and then discussion recommendations specifically from the Federation Task Force. But that's a forum for you to come and interact with the commission and to both ask questions and answer questions that the commissioners may have for you. As always, we welcome you to come to our website and subscribe to our newsletters. We have technical ticketing, help desk, sign up for Wired, take a look at the Aspen events calendar. We're adding more things all the time. We have our YouTube channel. I'll also put a link to that. That's where the recording from this session will be housed. And then our directory. So, you know, if you have a question, as Jim said, don't hesitate to get in touch. I'll put a link to this evaluation. We always are so appreciative when you take time to give us your feedback on each of these sessions. We review this information and it really helps us to focus upcoming topics and to improve our practice. So the QR code is here, and then I'll put the link to this, this evaluation in the chat as well. You can reach out to Jenny, but we'll put Jim's, or Jim, if you wouldn't mind putting your email address in the chat so that folks can get in touch with you too. Let's see. Yeah, Rachel and Slavin, if you want to open the mic and tell us a little bit more about both of the things that you're talking about in the chat.
Sure. I was just plugging our session that Alyssa Wallentees and I believe Bruce Newell from the Trust, and I think Sean Anderson's going to be our moderator, and possibly Jenny and or Tracy will be there. We're going to talk about how the legislative session has been going. It won't be quite over yet, unfortunately, but we'll kind of do a recap. We'll talk about how you can advocate during the session and during the interim between sessions. We'll talk about how our roadshow went and the grassroots advocacy that we're working on. And we'll also look ahead to the next session and talk about any priorities we already have and plans that we can start working on now.
That sounds awesome. Slavin, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I'm out sick today, so I can't talk very much, but I will try. So the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion pre-conference session will be led by two facilitators from Empower Montana. They've been doing this work in Montana for 25 years and are really dynamic and compassionate and cool people. So whoever participates will hopefully leave with some action items around how to implement EDI initiatives in your library. And this is part of the work of the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion interest group that Alyssa Ramirez, Emily Wicks, and I have revived. Thank you.
Fantastic. And you said that's a pre-conference session, is that right?
Yes, Wednesday at 9.
Okay. There are so many great sessions. Melissa, yes, I see you have your hand up and you've been patiently waiting.
Oh, it's okay. Hi, how are you?
Great, great.
Good. You know, it's funny, you had laws or updates on laws today as part of your chat. And I was looking earlier today because there's a lot of sensational news coming out of Florida about the potential for prosecuting school librarians there based on a new law that was put in place last year by Ron DeSantis. And you know, I went back and read the bill. It's 1467 was the HB 1467 in Florida. It was put into law. And what it does is it defines the responsibilities of school board members, administrators, and specifically school librarians in selecting instructional and reviewing instructional materials in schools. And when I look at Montana law, you know, it's not very specific. And on one hand, the specificity in Florida is not a bad thing because it really names certified school library media specialists, right? On the other hand, then those people are responsible for what also is in that law, which is transparency and the opportunity for parental review and clearly documenting, you know, the processes for objecting to, you know, parental objections and how those are processed. So I guess my question is, you know, what's happening in Montana with that? All I see right now is HB 234 in Montana, which is revising dissemination of obscene material to minors laws. And that's just one example of a law that also is now looking at including school librarians, but also has implications for public librarians. What are your thoughts on this? Will there be discussions around these types of laws, particularly in a state like Florida that is very influential in other conservative states like Montana now is in our legislature?
No, thanks for that question. I would defer to Rachel as MLA is the body, representative body that provides the representation for, you know, members in that. So Rachel, I don't know if you have anything that you can update on some of the similar legislation that's going into Montana.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what other bills we've looked at so far. Like you said, there's 234, which we did manage to get public libraries and museums removed from the language of that because they were originally included. Sorry, my phone's ringing. We are still taking a stance against that because it does, it is a First Amendment issue. It seems, even though the people who are sponsoring it say that it's not an LGBT issue, it also seems like an LGBT issue, and libraries are for everybody. We don't want to target anybody. We have had a few that pertain specifically to school I'm trying to think of the word, but like more education, sex ed and things like that we've looked at. And I think the main one, I'm trying to remember what the number is. I think it's a Senate bill, was the one that prohibited sexual education for grades under 6, and also for all grades prohibited any education that referred to things like sexual identity, gender identity, sexual relationships in general for all grades. But I can't remember that bill at the moment. But yes, did you have another question, Melissa? I see your hand still up.
No, I'm just here looking at things. I strongly encourage you to look at that House Bill 1467 that went through the Florida legislature and DeSantis signed into law. There's something on his website too at the Florida governor's office, particularly since he's planning a pretty strong run to become president. And how it both empowers school librarians, it makes them step up as certified professionals, but it also includes them in that, people that are responsible for under the law, again, with kind of vague mention, it wasn't about obscenity, but they use the word pornography in the law. What is the definition of that? What is the definition of, obscene material in that HB 234 for Montana? I think it's really a shared concern with public librarians that partly because of what we saw also out in Oregon, and I don't know if you noticed the incident in the county outside it in Oregon that where the Oregon Library Association basically published a defamation against that county library director, librarian, and instead of being in league and supporting that librarian, was really like outing her. And then there was threats for litigation. I just think that on the front lines that we're under a lot of pressure to both, to answer to everyone about this issue, and that there's not enough support for the librarians who are just really trying to make decisions every day with their board members about, what is pornographic, what is obscene, what is woke, what is gender friendly, what is not, you know what I mean? And so I encourage you to look at the laws and to maintain a proactive, supportive stance toward all of your librarians here in this state, even if you don't think they've made the right decision, because we're really being threatened in other places in the country with like litigation for just being librarians, right? So that's why I brought this up, since you had law as your topic, and thank you for letting me talk a minute about it.
No problem. And yeah, and I'd go back to subscribing if you're not on Wired, following those updates. I'm sure that, and I know, based on last week's update and going forward, that you'll find some good information about the status of some of those bills. Other questions, or we still have Jim here, and if there's anything else that we could look at or share, we're happy to do that. Otherwise, we're also always happy to give you back a little bit of time to your day. Hearing none at the moment, I want to thank you again for joining us. I'll conclude the recording here and let you know that it will be posted later this afternoon to the YouTube channel, as well as the meeting that is posted in the Aspen events calendar. So thanks again for joining us and your great questions and your great discussion.